Welcome back, y'all. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and I'm your host, Bull. It's Thursday of an SEC game week, so we will be taking a look at the updated status report or injury report, whatever it's called, and talking about what that's going to mean for the game coming up this Saturday night. We'll also be taking a look at some prop bets and getting a feel for how Vegas thinks this game is going to end up playing out. Hopefully, we can also win y'all some money. If you've been paying attention to that over the past couple of weeks, and I think that we have won y'all some money. We'll also be talking to some people who have battered Vols syndrome. We're going to try to simplify this game the best way that we can, and hopefully we can help y'all to start to get over that, because this is going to be a great season for our Vols, and we hate for y'all to just spend it being miserable, man, just being negative every single weekend. So as always, we definitely appreciate y'all's support. Please continue to make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, y'all, let's take a look at this status report. Timmy G and I did look at this briefly last night in the midweek chat. That's something new that we're going to be doing on this channel every single Wednesday night around 8:30 to 8:45. It's going to be live, and we're going to be very, very heavy in the chat, talking to y'all, getting all the thoughts and all that good stuff about whoever we're playing up against that weekend. If it's going to be like next week where there's a bye, we'll probably still do it and just talk about the entire team, talk about Tennessee in general, and also some national stuff. So we hope that y'all will be joining us in the future. And for those of y'all that did, we hope that y'all had a really good time. Now, just talking about this whole, status update stuff, there's a couple of things that I do want to point out with this. So this is just the first one, and there's no penalties if the players that are listed as out or questionable or probable end up actually playing. There will be a final one that I believe has to be submitted by like an hour before kickoff on Saturdays or on game days, whatever. And, the coaching staffs like to act like they have no part in this. It's all supposed to be coming from the medical staff with each program. But I do believe that staffs like, ours, Coach Heupel probably does have his handprint in on what is going out to the SEC. And if you get things wrong, like let's just say on that final update, if you have some players listed as out, but they end up playing, I think that the only penalty is like a fine that comes from the SEC, and it's supposed to increase the more times that you do it. So, I mean, maybe some teams will just take that risk every now and then, especially if you haven't had any fines throughout the entire year. Maybe say, look, we're just going to take one for the team. If you feel like you want to do some extra gamesmanship, that probably won't happen too often, but it can happen. So I guess whole point is this: you can kind of take all of this, this whole list sort of with a grain of salt. With all that being said, the players that we have listed as out is going to be, of course, Jordan Thomas. John Slaughter is going to be new. Not quite sure what's going on with him. Probably something very minor. He should be back at some point throughout the rest of this season. As far as what it means to this team and losing John Slaughter, it's going to be more about special teams. He's probably safety number 4. And I feel like we will have some other players that we can fit into those special teams roles that are going to be underclassmen that could probably produce about the same way that John Slaughter would. The next player is going to be Sham Umarov, who would be our backup guard, primarily on the left side, but also on that right side. This is a little bit more of an issue if he can't go. And that's just because, look, Andre Carrick has played great. Okay, I think he's done a phenomenal job as long as he's been in this season, but he has been a little bit injury prone. So if Carrick, for whatever reason, goes down, Jackson Lampley is slotted to be his backup. Now, I love Jackson Lampley, but last weekend was not his best performance. He's going to have to step it up. And I would expect that in this game, if he does have to go, he will be up to that challenge. But ultimately, if Sham goes down, and really if any of our offensive linemen go down or just have to come out, of the game for like a snap or two, Dane Davis will be the guy to fill in for those players. Next, we have Lance Hurd, who is listed as questionable. Now, he's going to be our starting left tackle. Sat out last weekend with what sounds like a very minor ankle deal, not an injury, whatever, just trying to rest him, get him back to 100% health for this game. I would expect that he does go. If he doesn't, again, like we just said, Dane Davis fills in right there. He should be able to kind of live up to the challenge. And if he's struggling some, we can have some extra players come in, whether it's tight ends, whether it's running backs, whatever, to help block for him, to help offset whatever he's not doing that we feel like Lance Hurd can do. But if we have our starting 5 on the offensive line, we are going to have a very productive day with our offense. So we will keep a very close eye out on that. In the upcoming days. Now, the next 3 players are going to be William Wright, Ben Bolton, and William Satterwhite, all listed as probable. William Wright and Ben Bolton would be more special teams guys. William Satterwhite is going to be listed as our backup center, but again, Dane Davis would be the guy if Cooper Mays has to go out for whatever reason. But hopefully William Satterwhite can just get himself back to 100% health, because I do feel like on down the line, we will want to put him into some of these games, especially versus SEC competition, if we're blowing them out. So that would be good experience for him. Now, taking a look at Oklahoma's players that they have out. Everyone here are players that we pretty much expected would be out. Outside of Gentry Williams, there has been a little bit of buzz coming out of Oklahoma's insiders and fan base, all that type of stuff, that Gentry Williams might go in this game. He's a cornerback. I think he's got some sort of a shoulder injury. At this point, it looks like he's out. Keep in mind, y'all, like we talked about, all these players right here could still end up going regardless of what it says, or they could end up not playing regardless of what it says very early on in this process. We'll see what comes out on Saturday. Outside of that, the next players of note that I feel like we should talk about is going to be Branson Hickman. He was their true starting center. He played like 10 snaps versus Temple. I think that he's a pretty solid player. He transferred in from SMU. He's not great. I think that the ceiling for their entire offensive line, if everybody comes back at 100% health, is going to be good, not great. I think that the offensive line has struggled mightily because they've got some third and fourth string guys playing, and they're all playing out of position. But I would expect that he is going to try to give it a go in this game and see how far, he can take it. Now, he's dealing with a high ankle sprain. Those things can be very, very tricky. I don't know. That's going to be mostly about how does he deal with the pain. As I've said before, if I'm Oklahoma, I'm sitting all these guys out because them coming back really probably will not make that much of a difference. And there's no need to have, a high ankle sprain, which is something that can linger if you don't just make sure that you rest it up and all that type of stuff, heal it up. It can linger throughout the entire season. I think that's the last thing that Oklahoma wants. Their first year in the SEC with one of the toughest schedules in the SEC. It's going to be tough. Now, the next player is going to be Jake Taylor, who is an offensive tackle. I think that he's going to try to go in this game as well. Same thing that I kind of talked about with Branson Hickman. He's a pretty solid player, probably better than what they have in there right now. It should give him some better flexibility to move some players that might be kind of playing out of position to more of their true positions. We'll see what happens right there. Then they've got Nick Anderson, who is the big 6'4", 220-pound wide receiver. I think that he's really good. How much of a difference can he make with this offense? I think that he can make some, all depending on how they're trying to utilize him. He's more of that deep threat. Can they force the football down the field with an offensive line that I think is going to struggle to block Tennessee's front? That is yet to be seen, and I think that that is the million-dollar question at this point. I'm leaning more towards I don't think that he's going to make that much of a difference either. Now, Andrew Anthony will be another wide receiver. He's about 6'1", I think about 210, 215 pounds. In my mind, he's more of like a possession wide receiver. He might actually have more catches in this game than Nick Anderson, just because it's going to be easier for them to get the football out of their hands quickly to some of their more, like catch the ball, on some first, on some 8-10 yard routes type of a deal. I think that he's going to be maybe a little bit better at that than a Nick Anderson, but he's not the best athlete, okay? I think that he is average at best. They better be careful trying to throw the football to him, especially on the outside, because he is more of an outside wide receiver. And if he's matched up versus our corners, they're going to beat him out of the break. And I think that that could be some pick sixes waiting to happen. The next player is going to be Kendall Dolby. I hope I'm saying his name right. He is a defensive back. Now, I believe that he's going to play nickel for them. They call that the cheetah. And I'm not quite sure. If you are an Oklahoma fan, let me know. Is the cheetah more of the linebacker version of your nickel? Or is it, either one, whether it's a linebacker body or more of a cornerback's body? He would be more of the cornerback version. And their fans and their insiders, they love him. So, I guess he's supposed to be really good. We'll see. How do all these players look coming back? Coming off these injuries, how healthy are they for real? Now, with Kendall Dolby, I'm not quite sure. I think he might also be struggling with a shoulder injury as well. Could be off on that. Either way, how does he perform if he's not 100%? That should be a question, right? If he's not 100% and they try to throw him out there versus our secondary pieces, man, I think that we will target him and we'll find some ways just based off of whatever his injury might be that he's trying to come off of. We're going to try to test that, right? If it's lower body, we're going to get him isolated one-on-one, and we're going to take some deep shots at him for sure. And I think that we've got the wide receivers that are capable of doing that. The last player is going to be Troy Everett. He's another offensive lineman that I do expect will play in this game. You see he's listed as probable as well. He's going to be a guard. And now if he comes back and if Hickman doesn't go for whatever reason, I think that Everett could end up playing at center. And, I think that right now the weakest spot in Oklahoma's offensive line is at the center position. He's absolutely awful. But, we'll see. These players, in my mind, they're just not that much better than what they already have out there. Maybe they're more used to it. And if they're coming off of injuries, if they're not 100%, how well can they play for real, right? And then they also have not played together very much. I don't know how much offensive linemen have been practicing, but you would have to think that they haven't practiced that much with the ones over the past couple of weeks because the ones have to practice together to gel. I think that the offensive line will still need some time to gel. And that's just not going to happen in a single week of practice. It does not matter. Like, they will be able to gel together some, but it's not going to be, I don't think that the offensive line with everyone coming back is going to be good enough to block Tennessee's defensive front. With all that being said, I want to break this game down as simple as I can for those of y'all still struggling with battered Vols syndrome and think that we're going to blow it this weekend. Number one, as y'all just saw, Tennessee is the much healthier team. That is huge. We've got pretty much all of our players, and not really anyone's going to be struggling with any injuries. They're not trying to force themselves back up into the lineup, which is what Oklahoma's players are doing, especially up front, and that's going to be a huge problem for Oklahoma. Also, Tennessee is just a more talented team, whether it's with the starters or really even more so with the depth. Oklahoma has shown a tendency in every single game to kind of get worn down towards the end of the game. And a whole lot of that has to do with the injuries that they have, but it's also because they weren't that deep to begin with. But Tennessee is very deep and we're also very healthy. Those two things alone should give you a ton of confidence. But let's talk about Oklahoma's offense versus Tennessee's defense. It all starts up front. We've touched on it several times this entire week and in this video. I do not see any realistic way that Oklahoma's front can block Tennessee's front if they're struggling versus some group of 5 teams to get a push up front so that they can run that football. Their running backs, I mean, I think that their leading rusher as far as the running back goes has like 100 yards, like 120 yards. And Jackson Arnold is actually their leading rusher. And the main reason for that is he can make things happen whenever plays break down. But also, if he's working on some quarterback powers and things like that, then they've got some extra people inside of the box to block for him. They need 10 people to block to be able to get, positive yarders on a consistent basis versus group of 5 teams. So if you cannot run the football, then how are you going to be able to find success passing or doing anything else? It's all about being able to block, to run the football and be able to set things up for your passing game. That way, in any level of football, and Oklahoma would not be able to do it versus maybe the best defensive front in the entire country. If you don't believe that it's number one, then you know that it's top 5. Everyone knows that it's top 5. There really is no arguing that this D-line, our front in general, our entire front 7 is for real. But also, whenever you think about how they're going to be able to pass the football, especially down the field, all that they've done, again, versus group of 5 teams is dink and dunk. They've rarely ever been able to throw the football down the field. And when they do, they have to max protect, which means that they've got a bunch of people in blocking, not as many people going out for routes. Tennessee will be able to get pressure on if they hold in 6 people to block, 7 or 8 people to block. I think that we, can still get some pressure, but outside of that, we've got more people playing in coverage. So those windows get a whole lot tighter. And with a quarterback that's a redshirt freshman in a really big moment, you have to like your chances with the secondary that maybe hasn't been tested as much, but we know that there's veterans back there that are really good players to be able to get into the right spots and hopefully get some turnovers from, all of those perspectives. But not just that, man. You know that this front is top 10 in the entire country with getting pressure on quarterbacks this season without bringing any blitzes. Coach Tim Banks likes to blitz, especially on third downs. We haven't shown any of that stuff, so it gets a lot scarier, right? It's going to get real for Oklahoma's offense to try to have some explosive plays. If you're going 3 and out, because, listen, on their first drive, I would expect that they'll have some success. All that's going to be scripted. It's going to be a whole lot of dink and dunk. Tennessee's going to be content with sitting back and seeing what does Oklahoma want to do? How's our front doing? All that type of stuff. How do we look in coverage? And then in the second and third series, we're going to come up and play tighter versus that type of stuff. And then the pressure comes. So now we're talking about turnovers. And you've got to find some ways to get the football down the field. If you keep on going 3 and out, you're putting your defense on the field even longer. We already talked about with a lack of depth, those guys are going to start to get tired. And with all that being said, I want to talk about Oklahoma's defense versus Tennessee's offense. Everyone's talking about Oklahoma being very versatile on defense. We've talked about it so much on this channel as well. And they are versatile. They're multiple. They're going to try to stop Tennessee's run game. They're going to try to make Nico beat them with his arm, throwing the football down the field and maybe some one-on-one coverage or maybe, some tight zone windows, things like that. And maybe try to throw them off with all those different looks, different blitz packages and things like that. But when you think about Tennessee's offense at its core, what is it designed to do? It's designed to spread teams out so that we can do what? We can identify what coverages you're in. Where's the blitzes coming from? Because, the more that you get spread out, the more that you have to kind of declare where you're actually going to be playing at. Because if you try to hide it some and you're playing too far to the inside, we've got guys 20 yards outside of you. That is 6 points, right? So you have to show it more. And that's going to make it a lot easier for all of our players on offense to ID exactly what's going on with the fronts, with the blitzes, and with the coverages. it simplifies things. We're also going to see a much lighter box. And Oklahoma just don't have the horses up front to play a lighter box and stop Tennessee's offense. The only team that's really had success doing that has been Oklahoma for like one, or I'm sorry, not Oklahoma, but Alabama for one half, okay? And that was last season. And then also Georgia, you know what I'm saying? But those teams had multiple first rounders playing up front. Oklahoma doesn't, I don't think that they have any first rounders playing up front. You need some real dudes up there to be able to do that. So at some point, right, they will have to come up, bring someone else into the box because we will find success running it on a lighter box. And once they do that, now we've got for sure one-on-one matchups on the outside that Tennessee's wide receivers will win. We're bigger, we're stronger, we're faster. That goes back to us having a more talented roster. And man, Oklahoma's secondary has let those group of 5 wide receivers run wide open in man-to-man coverage. They've also busted in their coverages. This is a game that is set up for Tennessee to pretty much do whatever they want to at will. And Nico can also use his legs to extend the plays and to make things happen, which he will. We will also have some design quarterback runs for Nico. He has no problems doing that. And I mean, we'll kind of get into some of those numbers here in just a minute once we see those prop bets. But I think that Nico is going to have a really, really big day. I think that our offense in general will have a big day. There will most definitely be some explosive plays coming from our offense. And if Oklahoma's offense can't match any explosive plays at all, how are they going to be able to stay in this game? People will say, this is what the final score is going to be, right? And even if Tennessee's winning, like let's just say they might have Tennessee 38, Oklahoma 20. I'm curious, where do those 20 points come from with Oklahoma's offense? It's got to come from special teams or from the defense. It just is going to be almost impossible because of the way that the matchups look for their offense to score points. The defense is going to struggle to, get off blocks with one of the best offensive lines in the entire country. I think it's top 5, but it's for sure top 10. I think that's pretty much consensus with the entire, with all of the national media. So they just haven't seen a team that can do as many things as Tennessee can, being versatile on offense and defense with as many talented players. Tennessee is going to not just win this game, but dominate. And if all those things don't convince you to let the battered Vols syndrome go, if you can't start to loosen up your tight grips on that rope just a little bit, understand this. Coach Heupel is an offensive-minded coach. He was fired from Oklahoma because they said his offense was not good enough. And he is taking this game very, very personally. We know that from some of the previous things that he said. He's trying to keep things very, close to the vest. And the players are even saying, look, Coach Hype's making it all about that power T. That's what we're doing too. But make no mistake, the players, all the other coaches on this staff, they have a point to prove, and so does Heupel, and that's what they're going to go out there to do. I can promise you he will have some things drawn up for sure to make absolute certain that Tennessee's offense looks great, that our defense is ready, our players are going to be at their best, and this game could really get out of hand. I'm not going to give you all my final score right here. We're going to do that on the live show on Saturday morning, so tune in for that. But I will say I still feel like Tennessee wins this game by 3 or more touchdowns. All right, y'all, let's take a look at some of these prop bets from Sportsbook by FanDuel. We'll start off with the game line. They have Tennessee favored by 7.5 in this game. I know some places has that down as low as 6 points. Like I just told you, I would take this all day long because I believe that Tennessee is going to win this game by 3 or more touchdowns. So if you want to put some money on it, I think that now's the time because I feel like that line will probably go up in Tennessee's favor as we get closer to kickoff. But let's take a look at some of the touchdown scores. D. Samp's got the best odds. Tennessee running back, I think he's top 3 running backs in the whole country. He also has the best odds to be the first touchdown scorer. I could definitely see that, but I don't know if I put money on that necessarily just because I can see Tennessee scoring on a, pass and play, maybe early on in this game, especially with us spreading them out and Oklahoma maybe trying to disguise some of that stuff, getting a little bit too cute. Tennessee don't play that, man. Y'all better hope that the pass rush can get there because if not, Nico can make all the throws. Our wide receivers are dogs, and they will take it the distance. Now, I find this interesting that the next 2 players with good odds or with the next best odds to score in this game is going to be Deion Burks, who's number 6 for Oklahoma. He's their leading wide receiver right now. He's a smaller guy, kind of a, slot wide receiver type. And then also Nick Anderson, who this will be his first game back, if I'm not mistaken, this season. Both of them are really good players, but as we touched on, how are they going to get the football down the field if their offensive line can't hold up? I think that this is a situation where Vegas is just looking at the money that is flowing in. People are a little bit excited at this point. about their, players having the possibility of coming back. So the money is flowing towards those players. I would take those bets all day, especially to score first. I mean, those probably aren't the best odds if you really want to make some money on it. But just as far as them scoring period, I don't see how they can score period unless it's on some sort of, maybe jet sweep or something like that. But as far as catching the football, I don't see it. So maybe caution some because they could score rushing. I can't see that a lot more than I can see them scoring from catching a pass. And I know people think that the secondary is the weak spot of this defense or of this team, and it might be, but it does not mean that those players suck. They're really good, and they're going to be up to the challenge. Again, the front seven works hand in hand with that second half. Now, the fourth best odds to score a touchdown in this game period goes to Nico, and this is not with him passing. It's going to be with something else, either catching the pass or with his legs. I could see him being utilized as a wide receiver on a trick play. Maybe that happens in this one. Probably not, just because what's the point? I don't think we need to do that, but I could definitely see him scoring with his legs. So I like that. And then y'all can see all the rest of them. There are some other players. I find it interesting that Jackson Arnold doesn't have very good odds to score at all. He's going to be a player that Tennessee will key in on in this game. But if Oklahoma gets down to that red zone area, I would expect that he's probably going to be a player that they try to get the football to just because of the numbers game inside of the box. So watch out for that. And then I think that Bishop has a good chance to score. Brazel, he's probably going to get into the end zone. I hope that Bruce scores, man. I want to see him go ahead and go off right here. Also, Squirrel White. This is a game that I can see him getting matched up versus one of their linebackers that they drop into like a deep third coverage. Are you kidding me, dude? We're going to run right past that and throw it right over your head. And I think that that's something that Tennessee's looking for in coverage. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a really good day. I would love to see some of our tight ends score. Holden Stays looks like he has the best odds for our tight ends, but Ethan Davis is one that he should have better odds to score than Holden Stays because Ethan Davis is going to be a mismatch nightmare. I think Holden Stays will be too. But, I mean, Ethan Davis really, I think he can match up well with any of their players, whether it's, their linebackers, their cheetah player, or safeties or corners. I think that he can get that job done. Now, let's come on down to some more of these. We won't take a look at too many of them, but players who can score 2 touchdowns in this game. So D-Sam has the best odds right here. And then it's Nick Anderson who has better odds than Deion Burks right here. I think that makes sense. But I don't see, we already talked about, I don't see any of their players necessarily scoring 1 touchdown. So 2, a little bit far-fetched. If you could bet against that some type of a way, I would definitely do that for sure. And then Nico, man, he's got pretty solid odds to score twice. I think that he should have better odds than, any of these other players, maybe outside of D-Sam to score twice. But now once you get to players who can score 3 times, it gets a little bit more interesting because now Nico has the second best odds. I think that says that Vegas feels like if there is any player that can really have a Heisman performance in this game, it's going to be Nico. And then after that, it's Nick Anderson. Of course, D-Samp is going to have the best odds, and I would not be surprised for him to score 3 times in this game by any means. Let's take a look at the passing touchdowns for each quarterback right here. The redshirt freshmen, we have Jackson Arnold, who it looks like FanDuel thinks that he's going to throw for about 225 yards. I don't see that. I don't know what his average is. I think that their offense might be averaging, I could be off, maybe it's like 160 something yards per game passing. They're not going to get more than that in this game. That's just not going to happen. This is the best defense that they've faced by far. And the mismatch in this game is absolutely tremendous. So I'm going to be a lot more interested just to see what is Oklahoma's offensive game plan. Like, I cannot wait to see what they feel like they can do. What do they try early on with that opening script? So, yeah, I would say, if you can bet against those odds for Jackson Arnold to have over 225 yards passing, I would take that all day long. I think that is almost a slim to none chance that actually happens. So for Nico, it looks like about 250 is what FanDuel thinks he will throw for. I can see that. I think that's a very good number for him, but he could go over that. Just all depending on how this game kind of plays out. But at this point, I would say that the safest bet might be to go with the 225 plus. I think that might be the tier that I would go to, just if you want to play this thing safe. And if you really want to try to get some bang for your buck, I would say maybe go for the 275 plus. You got some good numbers right there. You should be able to, rack in some cash on that. Now, as far as the rushing touchdowns, looks like they think that D-Samp's going to get about 90 yards in this game. I can see that. I still feel like Tennessee rushes for over 150. And, of course, that's going to be spread out with D-Samp, I think with Bishop, probably some with Cam Selden, but also with Nico. I feel like he should have a pretty good game rushing. So that's one that I feel pretty confident in. If you want to, make some money, I would definitely put some money on D-Samp getting over 90 yards in this game. Now, as far as Nico goes with the rushing, it looks like they think that he'll get about 25-ish yards in this game. I think that he goes over that. I can see him getting about 35, maybe 40 with one touchdown, just because he will have some design runs in this game. I'm almost certain of that. But he's also going to tuck it and run if plays kind of break down, or if he just kind of doesn't know what the heck is going on with the coverages, things like that. If there's any sort of a miscommunication, he will use his legs. He's shown that. So really, I mean, thinking about, let's see, yeah, so 40 yards, I think I will put some money on that. You got some good numbers right there. Now, it looks like they're thinking that Barnes, who is the leading running back as far as rushing goes from Oklahoma, they've got him at about, looks like 40 yards is what they think he'll get. I think that that's a pretty decent spot. He's going to be up under that. I just don't see him having any sort of success rushing on Tennessee's defense at all. I don't see that happening by any means. Jackson Arnold has been their leading rusher. I think that that trend will continue. Now, they do have some other running backs like Tatum. Maybe he has a little bit of a better game, but I don't see their running backs breaking about 65 yards as a unit in this game. I don't think that they have 65 yards rushing total, so that would include Jackson Arnold in this game. Now, as far as receiving yards, they've got Brewer at about 40, and I think that does make sense. This is a game that Brew should have some success in. We will try to get some easy passes out there to Brew, early on in this game. We know that Brew is a dog, and he's going to make those catches, right? If it's some tight windows and some tough catches, Nico's probably going to be going to Brew. He really does like Brew. Obviously, he grew up being kind of a fan of Brew. Like, they both came from Southern California. So I think that he will be going to Brew and in some of those more critical situations. And I expect for Brew to step up, no question. Hopefully, he will get a touchdown in this game. Next is going to be Squirrel White. It looks like they have him at about 50 yards. I could see that for sure. Like we talked about, he's going to be a big mismatch problem with some of the coverages that Oklahoma likes to do. I think that we will get him isolated versus someone that cannot cover him from a speed perspective. It does seem like Oklahoma trusts some of their bigger players' speed a little bit more because they put them down the field. This is SEC now. Those guys maybe could have gotten away with that versus group of five teams, or maybe even versus some of those Big 12 teams. You ain't going to get away with that versus some of the upper echelon teams in the SEC, especially our Vols. We've got a lot of guys that can run very, very fast. So who knows if we actually see those crazy coverages in this one. I think that they're going to have to play a lot more man. But I do think that Squirrel White will have a good game. Also think that Chris Brazzell right here will have a good game. They got him at about 40 yards, same as Brew. I think that he's going to get more yards than that. He's going back to the Midwest. He's from Texas. He probably grew up hating Oklahoma. So that's just a little bit more fuel to his fire. And I would expect for him to have a really good day as well. Now, D. Samp as a wide receiver, I actually think that we will utilize him and our tight ends and our other running backs a little bit more, in this game as wide receivers. What I have noticed from Oklahoma's defense is they'll get really deep into their zone coverages, and they will allow for some running backs and tight ends to sneak out of the backfield and just make some catches and get a ton of yards. They're not doing a great job coming down and making those tackles. So I would expect the D. Samp, we've seen those shovel passes too. I would expect that we run some sort of a variation of that in this game. I do think the D. Samp will have, let's see what FanDuel has him at. Looks like they think less than 25 yards. I think that he will get more than 25 yards as a receiver in this game. And as far as Oklahoma's total points, FanDuel has Oklahoma at about 24.5. And they're pretty much saying that the under is more of what they're leaning towards. I take the under on that all day long. This is with their, so this is their total points. It's not even just talking about offense. So I'm glad that I clarified that, but it doesn't matter. I don't think that their special teams is going to be able to score enough points. I would set the over-under for Oklahoma's offense alone to about 10 points, right? And I don't think that their special teams or their defense is going to score another 14 points by any means. And they've got Tennessee's total points at 32.5, the exact same numbers for the over and the under. I would take the over on this. Not going to give you all my final score. Like I told you, you got to wait till Saturday morning for that. But I do think that Tennessee scores more points than that in this game. And I believe that's all the ones that I just kind of singled out, but I'll just, kind of scroll through so that y'all can see what the rest of that looks like. But thank y'all so much for sticking all the way to the end. I hope that, we made y'all feel a little bit more comfortable about this game. Most of us do feel great, but for those of y'all that don't, we hope that you have more confidence about this one coming up on Saturday. And we do hope that y'all will join us for the live pregame show. It will be me, Timmy G, and P on that one. It is always a whole lot of fun. But thank y'all so much for sticking all the way to the end. And please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.